Energy expenditure and output. Energy is the power which may be translated into motion, overcoming resistance, or affecting physical change, so it's the ability to do work. Energy is measured in kilocalories, which is the equivalent of 1,000 calories. It's measured in kilocalories because calories are too small to trace and measure. This is the same for joules and kilojoules. Kilojoules are used in the metric system. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins each supply a specific amount of energy. The energy for food is measured in the following ways. 1 gram of carbohydrate supplies 4 kilocalories, 1 gram of fat supplies 9 kilocalories, and 1 gram of protein supplies 4 kilocalories. Carbohydrates are 60 to 70% of the main energy contribution in our bodies, so carbohydrates are mainly sugars, which are saccharides. Proteins are able to break down food and help with growth and repair. Proteins are made from amino acids. In total, there are 20 amino acids, which can be put together in a number of different ways to form different proteins. Finally, fats are made from triglycerides, which contain 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. For example, a packet of crisps. So calories in a packet of crisps are 525 kilocalories. There are 50 grams of carbohydrates, 6.5 grams of proteins, and 33 grams of fat. Skin fold calipers are used in the measurement of skin fold thickness and the estimation of total body fat. It's important to ensure that the calipers are correctly calibrated and standardized procedures are followed when taking the measurements. Skin fold measurements can be used for 3 to 9 sites around the body. The right side of your body is usually only used for consistency. The tester pinches the skin at the appropriate site to raise a double layer of skin and the underlying tissue, not the muscle. To get rid of the muscle, you roll your fingers together. The calipers are then applied 1 centimeter below at a right angle to the pinch, and the reading is in millimeters. The mean of the two measurements should be taken, so this is more likely to give a more accurate measure, as an average will be drawn from the two readings. If the two measurements differ greatly, a third reading should be done to make the results more reliable. So as you can see from the photo, an X is put on the skin, and this is where you should pinch, and it should not be thicker or thinner than the X. So the advantages are that the skin fold measurements are widely utilised to assess body composition. It's also a lot simpler than hydrostatic weighing, as it's cheaper and it can be done in your own home. Disadvantage, however, is that it's not completely accurate, as the tester may get the muscle in the caliper and therefore be an inaccurate reading. Next I'm going to talk about is the bioelectric impedance. So the BI analyzer is a scientific instrument used in the research and analysis. BI measures the resistance of body tissue to the flow of a small harmless electrical signal. The proportion of body fat can be calculated as the current flows more easily through parts of the body that are composed mostly of water, such as blood, urine and muscle. The electrical signal finds it a lot harder to flow through bone, fat or air. So it is possible to predict how much body fat a person has by combining their BI measure with other factors such as their height, weight, gender, fitness level and their age. So advantages of this is that this method of body composition analysis is very simple and quick to perform, and if you have the right equipment it can be done at home, but it's only accurate if the individual is very hydrated, because as it said earlier, it flows easily through parts of the body that are composed of water. So if you aren't hydrated, then it won't be very accurate. Disadvantage is that the equipment can be quite expensive, and the lower price of these equipment range from about £100, but the top prices will range to around £500 to £600. Next I'm going to talk about is hydrodensometry. So this weighing is also an underwater weighing method. It's a classic measure of body composition. The purpose is the underwater weighing is measured the density of the body, and from that figure it calculates the percentage of body fat. So the procedure for this: the dry weight of the subject, so the individual, is first determined. The individual in minimal clothing then sits on a specialised seat. And then they expel all the air from their lungs. This will be by blowing out when they're in the water. Then they're lowered into the tank until all their body is immersed. The person must remain motionless underwater while the underwater weigh is recorded. This procedure is repeated several times to get a dependable underwater weight measure. So advantages of this is that underwater weighing is the most widely used test for the body density, and it's part of a good measure for indirect measurements. Also, it's very accurate, and it's the most accurate of the three. Disadvantages are that the equipment required to do underwater weighing is very expensive, and the tanks are mostly located at universities or other research institutions, and there's generally not very much easy access to the general population. But to do this, you'll need equipment like the hydrostatic stainless steel weighing tank, including underwater mounted chair and scale, and weighing belt, and sometimes a nose clip. A more simple setup may include a chair, a scale suspended from a diving board over a pool or a hot tub. Basal metabolic rate, also known as BMR. This is the total number of calories that your body needs to perform basic life-sustaining functions. These basal functions include circulation, breathing, cell production, nutrient processing, protein synthesis, and ion transport. The factors that affect BMR firstly is climate. Your BMR will increase when you're cold and when you're hot. This is because when you're cold you shiver to keep your body warm, and shivering is when all your muscles in your body are contracting and relaxing very quickly. Therefore, this will need energy in the form of ATP, which increases the amount of your BMR. Also, another factor that affects it is age. An individual's BMR reduces as they age. This is because when they're younger, they tend to be doing more exercise and running around. Moreover, they're able to do exercise at a higher intensity than when they're older, as in general their bodies don't work as well and aren't able to do high intensity exercise when you're older. The next one, physical activity. Physical exercise is not only responsible for burning calories, but also for increasing an individual's BMR, due to the additional lean muscle mass that is created as a result of exercise. Lean muscle tissue is also much more metabolically demanding than fat tissue, so an individual will burn more calories even while sleeping. So therefore, the more physically active you are, then the higher your BMR. The next one is gender. So in general, men have a higher density of lean muscle mass and lower body fat percentage. Because of this, men tend to have a higher BMR than women do. BMR also affects an individual's calorific intake. If the individual is doing a lot of sport, like football or rugby, then they're burning a lot of calories than someone who's sat at work all day at their desk. Moreover, a younger individual's BMR will be higher than an elderly individual. This means they'll need to consume more calories in order to keep their body going. Now I'm going to talk about energy expenditure and energy intake. As you can see from these diagrams on the left, if you intake more energy than you're giving off, then that's when you gain weight. For example, this is when someone's eating a lot of calories and then they're not doing the exercise to burn it off, therefore they'll put on weight. Weight loss, on the other hand, is if you're doing a lot of exercise all day, so energy expenditure, if you're giving off energy, and your energy intake is smaller than that, then you'll lose weight. So if you're running around playing football and you're still eating but not eating as much, then you'll lose weight. However, the weight is maintained if energy intake and energy expenditure remain the same. So if you're eating the same amount as you're burning, then your weight will maintain. So to calculate our body's total metabolic rate, we'll have 5 things that we need to consider. The first one, obviously, BMR. So the lowest rate of energy expenditure needed to sustain a body's essential functions whilst at rest. So this is including your 8 hours sleep and your 12 hours of fasting. And then you have your RMR, which is your resting metabolic rate. 60 to 70% of total energy expenditure. This is without sleep. This will be influenced by age, sex, and genetic background of body composition. The next one is dietary thermogeneous, so energy expenditure above that of RMR, the process of digestion, transport and storage of food, and absorption. So regular meals are said to maintain a higher dietary thermogeneous. And then you've got your adaptive thermogeneous, so energy expenditure that occurs as a result of environmental or psychological stresses that are placed on our body. So This is like when the temperature is very cold, you'll be shivering, or when the temperature is very hot, then you'll be sweating. And finally, physical activity. So additional energy above the RMR and the directory relating to the specific activity undertaken. So this is exactly how much you'll vary in each day. Now I'm going to talk about METs. So the use of oxygen consumption per unit of body weight per minute to estimate exercise intensity, as oxygen consumption is directly proportional to energy expenditure during exercise. So now I'm going to talk about how many calories are burned during exercise. So to work out, you do METs times 3.5 times our weight, which has to be in kilograms. You then divide it by 200 and times it by the duration in minutes. So an 80 kilogram rugby player will be playing for an 80-minute game. So the MET of rugby is 8. So you do 8 times 3.5 times 80, so that's their weight in kilograms. That then equals 2,240. You then divide it by 200, which works out at 11 kilocalories per minute. And then the game lasts 80 minutes, so you times it by 80. So a rugby player who's around 80 kilograms and plays an 80-minute game will have around 896 kilocalories an hour. That's how many calories they'll burn during their game. Next, body weight is normally measured in kilograms. Energy and nutrient requirements are based around our body mass. So work is done when a force is obviously applied to the body to move it over a certain distance. So work equals force in newtons times distance moved in meters. So force equals kilograms of body weight times 10. So work is measured in joules and therefore relates to how many calories we would require for an activity. So Usain Bolt, he weighs 94 kilograms and runs 100 meters. So he requires 94,000 joules, which is more commonly known as 94 kilojoules. Direct and indirect calorimetry. So direct measures the actual amount of heat produced for the body. Having an athlete working in an airtight chamber or a human calorimetry. Coils in the ceiling contain water circulating at a specific temperature. The athlete has a mouthpiece on so they're able to breathe through this. As they work, the water temp increases depending on the amount of heat and energy the athlete gives off during their exercise. So this could be while they're cycling a bike or running on a running machine. The advantage of this method is that it's very accurate and reliable. However, it's very expensive and not very accessible for the general public. And indirect estimates heat production by measuring respiratory gases, often via the Douglas bag collection and gas analysis system. The energy consumption is calculated from the amount of oxygen consumed. So 1 litre of oxygen is 4.8 kilocalories expended. So this method is not as accurate as direct. However, it is much more accessible as you can even do it in your own home. Usain Bolt. He is 193 centimeters, which is 6'4", and he weighs 86 kilograms. He usually runs 100 meters, 200 meters, and 400 meters. Bolt uses a combination of plyometric training and weight training to build a functional strength. The core exercises for improving performance over 100 meters and 200 meters. So he uses weighted lunges with heavy dumbbells, weighted squats, cabled leg drives, explosive step-ups, bunny hops and box jumps, frog leaps, ankle rolls, and high knee skips. So lunges and squats are the core weight to build up his muscle. So he'll do 8 to 12 reps, and then his plyometric training will last around half an hour. He also does circuit training as a part of this. On his daily training, Bolt trains for around 3 hours a day, but this is intensive training, followed by a rest massage to relax all his body and make sure it fully recovers before the next session.